Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Morena Kalo, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Roger Burton from Constantia, Royale. Roger, a warm welcome. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Morena. I've been in the Constantia Valley for about 8 years now and making wine for Constantia Royale. I studied at Stellenbosch University and graduated in 1999, so getting a bit long in the tooth now. But I've been loving making wine here, and we focus mainly on Sauvignon Blanc. So it's a good time to be in the Constantia Valley making Sauvignon.
It certainly is, especially since they really are hanging their hat on Sauvignon Blanc. Tell me, how many hectares of vines are you farming?
So just 7. The entire farm is about 14 hectares. It's an interesting farm right on the M3 highway, so it's kind of Constantia suburbia. But we've got 7 hectares of Sauvignon, 6.5 hectares and half a hectare of Semillon that we work with, and so we can give it quite a lot of TLC.
Mm-hmm. And if any of our listeners were to want to come and experience Constantia Royale, are you open to the public? Was it by appointment only? How does it work?
So it's a very private farm, family owned. It's actually the oldest family owned wine estate in Constantia, funnily enough. But we don't have a public tasting room. But sometimes people are quite fanatic about trying to taste these smaller kind of parcels of wine. So if anybody wants to, we can organize a tasting by appointment. They can find my details on the website and reach out to me.
Okay. And the wines? Sauvignon Blanc, what else is there?
So, as I mentioned, we've got a tiny bit of Semillon that we grow there also. But, this farm has had grapes on it for probably about 300 years. It was part of the Alphen estate originally. At that stage, it was mainly kind of Hannepoort for eating rather than actual winemaking. And the family kind of moved around the world a little bit and then settled back down in 2001. And planted some Cab and some Merlot and some Sauvignon. And reached out to me in 2013 and kind of said, they were quite keen to start their own label. So the farm is called Nova Zonnestraal, but the brand is Constantia Royale. And I'd agreed that I worked at Burton in early 2000s, and I just loved Constantia, and I've been living in Cape Town for my whole life. So it just fitted like a glove for me to come and help these guys start out a new brand. And one of the decisions we made was, Sauvignon Blanc just grows so well. Let's pull out the reds. It wasn't an easy decision to make because the reds are, as Constantia reds are sublime. But we just wanted to be kind of a master of Sauvignon Blanc.
Mm-hmm. And just keep your focus on what can be done really, really well. So for yourself, why winemaking? How did you come to that point?
I think that was more that I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think because I remember as a kid I always wanted to be a game ranger as a kid. I loved the outdoors, and then I kind of figured as I got older probably botany would be something I'd rather do. But my dad kind of always said, just careful, you have these ideas of working outside, but often you end up working in a laboratory. So I went off to Stellies to do a BSc agriculture. And I had always had winemaking in the back of my mind, but at the age of like 17, 18, you're actually not drinking much wine. You're drinking beer and cheap spirits, I remember going on a crash course, and I just looked at it and I just thought there was a little bit of everything. There was chemistry, there was days that you would spend in the vineyard, and then there was days you'd spend in the cellar being creative with blending, and then there were days you would have functions at these fancy restaurants, and I just thought, flip, and this is something I can do something different every single day, and I think that's what attracted me.
Yeah, it seems to be a very common thread with winemakers, that definite desire to be outdoors and have that kind of hands-on experience. And then, those who didn't know from the get-go eventually just found their way into winemaking. I know you've traveled the world to many places. Have you come across any wines that really stand out, whether they stood out for the right reasons or the wrong reasons?
That's a hard one for me to answer because, I just love the variety in wine. So to be honest, I love every region I go to. Every region has something amazing. Funny enough, I've never been to Western Australia, but Margaret River has always just resonated with me. I think it's something to do with me being a lover of the Atlantic Ocean here. It looks like Margaret River has that same kind of feeling. And I was lucky enough to work in an Oddbins in London in the early 2000s. And so I got to taste a lot of their wines. So I haven't been there, but I love Margaret River. And then, of course, not of course, but, I've traveled through the south of France and Spain, and I love that area. Really, there's something about that. Maybe again because we have this kind of warmer climate here that I just resonate with that philosophy of winemaking, and I love the wines.
Mm-hmm. And you mostly work with white wines, as we've now ascertained. But as a consumer, what really turns you on? Is it white, red, bubbly? Where does your heart lie?
Again, a variety. I want to be trying something different every night. I love Chenin Blanc. It's one of my favorite varieties. I love Cab Franc. I think I'm even toying with the idea of breaking the mold of being a Sauvignon specialist and putting some Cab Franc in at Novus Onostrol. But I think one of the reasons why I love Sauvignon Blanc also is it's just such a diverse grape. There's so many different styles, and for me, I can't hang my hat on one thing. Even though I'm a Sauvignon specialist, when it comes to consuming, I've got to be drinking something different every single time.
What would you say to someone who you meet and they say, "Oh, I can't drink Sauvignon Blanc; it's too acidic for me"?
So I get people telling me that every week. So I'm quite used to that question. It depends, if I'm talking about Constantia Royale, it's all about balance. I've tasted some amazing German wines that have massive amounts of acid, but they're just so beautifully balanced, and it's just such a gorgeous wine. I do think there's a lot of guys out there in the old days that just added too much Sauvignon. It kind of, it would make a wine into a show wine. The Sauvignon kind of makes the wine stand out a little bit, and so winemakers are tempted to go for that style. It's one of those things. Sauvignon Blanc is an acidic variety, and we are in a cool climate, so we do get good acids in the wine. But I challenge people. It's amazing. When I get them to drink the wine, they change their mind immediately. And there's no residual sugar in the wine. It's got nothing to do with balancing the acid with sugar. There's just certain things we do in the winery. If it's a very lean year, we can add some wood to the wine to give it a bit more complexity. We can mix the yeast in the tank and soften the acidity that way. So there's many things I can do in the leaner years, but when people drink the wine, they don't complain.
Mm-hmm. And would you say your wine kind of falls into a specific spectrum? And when I say spectrum, would it be more tropical fruit, or would it be the more green Pyrazini characters, or is it more a minerality that you aim for?
So I like, as you've probably figured by now, I'm into diversity. And so when I drink Sauvignon Blanc, I like it to have all of the above. Constantia is able to definitely get minerality into the wine, so we can tick that box quite comfortably making wine here. I've got two blocks that I work with, and one's an east-facing and one's a west-facing. So the west-facing block it gets a lot of that kind of mid to late afternoon sun. and that one, the soil's a little bit richer also, so I get a lot of tropical fruit out of that. And then I've got an east-facing block, which kind of gets the morning sun only and loses the afternoon sun. And added to that, it's on a very kind of granite and clay soil. So there I'm getting more greener styles, a bit of that saltiness coming through. And I just I love blending those two styles together. So the Constantia Royale typically will kind of be 50-50 green and tropical with a lot of that mineral undertone.
Contentious. What is your opinion on wine scoring, wine critics, wine competitions? Do they have a place?
They've definitely got a place, because otherwise we would have stopped doing this a long time ago. It's a very contentious question, though. Which critics and which competitions. I think as a young brand, you have to be entering competitions, because you've got to try and compete with the older guys. I think once you've established a brand, I see a lot of these established brands sometimes shy away from competitions because you don't want to be seen kind of getting a bad score. But to be honest, if I can be totally honest with you, the more competitions you enter, the more chance you have of getting good results. And so I think for a young brand, you enter as much as you can and you hope for the good results. Luckily, Constantia has a great track record of getting good results, and especially in the overseas competitions. So we found we're probably entering more these days on the overseas, like the IWSC and the Decanter and these kinds of competitions. As far as critics go, I know who likes our wine and I know who doesn't like our wine. So I mean, I'll be very, if I get to choose, I'll make sure it lands in the lap of someone who does enjoy the wine.
Yeah, I think you also recognize who these critics and competitions speak to and who they appeal to, the markets that really carry the benefit of entering the wines into those tastings. Food and wine pairing. Sauvignon Blanc isn't necessarily the easiest wine to pair food with, but what works? What really works, and what should consumers or our listeners stay away from?
Yeah, to be honest, I actually battle to pair Sauvignon Blanc with a lot of things, and especially the Constantia Royale. It's quite a specific style, and I've found it's quite tricky to get the right pairings. Look, having these oceans around us, just about any fish is always a great pairing with the Constantia Royale. Sushi also, I mean, it can handle that soy sauce and the tangy mayonnaise, and I really love sushi with the Constantia Royale. They say you should pair goat's cheese with Sauvignon Blanc, and I do enjoy a pairing. It's quite difficult for us when we kind of have snack platters, at the winery, because it's kind of, I think in one hand you've got to enjoy the wine, a sip of the wine, and then go to the food. What Sauvignon Blanc does do brilliantly is it's such a good palate cleanser, and so I always find it's nice to kind of have 2 or 3 sips of wine and then walk away, and you're not specifically trying to pair it, but whatever you eat, like 10-20 seconds later, tastes amazing. So I think Sauvignon Blanc is great for that, but definitely something out of the sea. That's my recommendation.
Okay, I think that's a very, very good tip. So I'll be a bit presumptuous here. I'm sure you might have overindulged once or twice in your life. Do you have a hangover cure? It's $1 million question. What is your hangover cure, or the best way of kind of negating the night before?
Well, look, so in my 40s now, I make sure I only drink on a Friday. So I think my main hangover cure is to make sure I'm not working the next day. In my 20s, I didn't even know what a hangover was. Unfortunately, it's these things are hitting me a bit harder. My only advice now is pop a Panado and drink a Energade the night before, and hopefully you feel okay in the morning. But my hangovers are getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I think I can attest to that. It seems to be getting so much worse. In terms of any good luck rituals when harvest starts, do you have any rituals that you do at the beginning of harvest or throughout harvest?
I don't have any rituals. I just think for me it's such a holistic thing making wine, and you've got a big team. You work with a small team throughout the whole year, but then at harvest time you've got a big team. And I think the main thing for us is we look at harvest time as a celebration, and so it's just important for me that the guys that come to the farm, often they're there for the first time. We don't get the same team every year. And I think we just, all of us in the management level, there's about 3 or 4 of us that kind of are in control of these teams. We try to set a really fun vibe, because there's something about having a positive vibe during harvest time that can be tasted in the wine. And I think as long as we can kind of get the team to buy into our positivity, then you pick that up in the taste of the wines.
Yeah, and I think just having a nice environment to work in kind of changes the whole feel about the experience, because it's long hours, long days, it's back-breaking work, in all fairness, so a good vibe is very important. What do you do when you're not working, when you're not making wine? What do you do in your free time?
So again, are we talking about in my 20s or now? Because these days I love a good weekend off. I'm not going to lie, just to relax in the garden with a cup of tea, and I love the outdoors. I'm an avid surfer. I'm not the best surfer in the world, but it's what I love doing. And so I try and get away into the ocean as often as I can. And then I'm an avid reader also. I just love reading. I've got a very broad curiosity about all sorts of subjects. So most of my free time is spent with a cup of tea on the couch reading. And that's kind of my happy place outside of winemaking.
That's really very civilized. And sport, are there any sports teams that you support, or individuals that you really support, or that you enjoy watching on the weekend?
Yeah, I've kind of grown out of sport. I watch my surfing. They have about 10 international competitions a year, and we've got 2 South Africans, Geordie Smith and I forget the name of the other guy, Matthew McGillivray from Jeffreys Bay. I religiously watch surfing. I just can't get enough of surfing. But I'm a Stormers supporter through and through, but I don't need to drive all the way to Cape Town to watch them anymore. I'm quite happy to watch them on the TV on the Saturday night. And I'm afraid to say I think I've become a little bit boring. As you say, probably civilized. I need to find a team that I can back again. But definitely I'm a Stormers. I'm anything to do with Western Province.
Fair enough. And just to come back to the surfing, I think Geordie Smith has done amazingly well. For me, my hero will always be Mr. Slater. Kelly Slater is just the bomb. And I actually watched something, I think it was on social media, where he surfed an incredible wave. He's just an artist on the waves. It's something cool.
Well, I mean, he is an artist, and I think that's the beautiful thing of surfing. It's such a creative sport, and I think I can tie that into why I do it. Because winemaking can be extremely technical, but it's the creativity where the magic happens. And I think it's one thing why surfers love surfing. There's so many winemakers out there that are surfing these days, and I think it's just a place where you go and you get ideas and you come back feeling $100. It's just, and Kelly Slater, he is a magician. Yeah.
Epic stuff. Are you into music at all? Are there any bands or artists or groups or genres that really kind of you get into?
Yeah, I play guitar, like acoustic guitar. So I love folk. So I'm into Bob Dylan and I love all the oldies, the Beatles, the Doors. I love that kind of music. But of Crosby, Stills and Nash, I'm a sucker for that kind of music. Good guitar and some harmony, and you've got me. And then I matriculated in 95, so I grew up in that era with Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and Soundgarden, and I had a lot of teenage angst at that stage of my life also. So those bands are incredibly special to me. I think my favorite, if I had to name my top 3 bands in no order, it would probably be Crowded House, Beatles and The Police.
Okay, some nice bands there.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy pretty much all of the ones that you've just mentioned as well, which is cool. Movies? You into movies?
Yeah.
Any top takers there?
Oh, Top Gun. I think you've put that one in my head now, though. I watched it the other night. It's flipping amazing. I don't know what Tom Cruise is taking to stay young like that. I love movies because I'm an escapist. You know, that's, again, the surfing, the reading, all of that is about escaping. And yeah, I love epic movies, you know, Dances with Wolves, Legends of the Fall, those kind of classic movies that have like a real time era to them and have a beautiful story and some really kind of beautiful morals in the story. I get very taken away, and if you add some good cinematography, I'm sold.
Legends of the Fall, one of my favorites as well, but probably not for the same reason as yours.
So you're into Kelly Slater and Brad Pitt, is what you're trying to say?
Yep. It's very simple, really. What would you consider to be the best advice to give someone? Just life advice.
Just to anyone, life advice. Yeah. I think number one, love and respect yourself. I think if you get that right, it overflows. And it's not an easy one to do because you know it's a tough world out there, and I think often we look down on ourselves. But I thoroughly believe if you can learn to love and forgive yourself first and foremost, that the world, you'll be able to spread that message to other people, and I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's difficult sometimes, and sometimes we put ourselves through the ringer unnecessarily. So it's a very good tip. What would you say was one of your best professional achievements?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think because I've only really known winemaking, I suppose that has to be my only professional achievement. I think my favorite wine I ever made was a 2009 Chenin Blanc at Tierhoek in the Picanieres Kloof. Just for a lot of different reasons. I think that wine, it did well, but it was something about that wine that I loved the wine. I loved making it, and people really loved drinking it. I think that was for me my favorite moment in my professional career, and I hope I get to repeat that moments like that a lot more going forward.
Complete the sentence. A table without wine is like? It's
like food without flavor. Yeah, it's wine is it's just wine is what brings us together.
A celebrity is paparazzi'd in a restaurant, and on the table is your wine. Who is that paparazzi? Oh, not the paparazzi, the celebrity, sorry.
A celebrity is paparazzi'd with my wine. Sure. Yeah, that's the hardest question anyone's ever asked me before. Let's just go with Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise. I don't even know why I'm saying that, just because.
Well, I think as brand ambassadors, they could do fairly well for you. Name 3 wines you would take with you to a deserted island. Any 3 from anywhere in the world.
So I wish I could remember what wine I had, but I had a Merceau back in the day, and it just had. I could see why people in the 90s were trying to like get so much oak into Chardonnay, because this wine was just like blow your socks off, beautiful. And I can't. Sometimes the best things go unremembered, so it's maybe a reason why I can't remember which one it was. But that particular wine I would take with me. I really love the Burton Blanc. You know, I worked there and I made a lot of that wine back in the day. But I just love that wine. It's just ticks so many boxes. It's fruity, it's fresh, it's vibrant, and it's an everyday drinking wine. And then I would probably take a nice red wine with me. Like I said, I'm into my Cab Francs these days. So I'd probably I tasted a Brevet Arts the other day that I really enjoyed. So I think maybe I'd take one of those with me also.
Very nice selection indeed. Okay, before we finish off, I'd like to play a quick little game with you. So I am going to name 3 varieties, and your job will be to pair each of these varieties either with an artist or a song or a genre of music. So let's start with Cabernet Franc.
That would be something like bluesy and soul of the 60s, I think. So I'll go with Joe Cocker.
Very bluesy, very cool. We have to throw in Sauvignon Blanc here.
Yeah, that would be fresh and light. I'd probably go with like a modern, no, maybe not modern. Let's go with U2.
Why would you say U2?
I just, they've got this like beautiful melody, and it kind of makes me feel uplifted. And I think I think Sauvignon Blanc is just, it just has that, makes you happy. It's got flavors of happiness, and I think U2 is that for me.
I love that, flavors of happiness. That's so cool. Let's finish this one off with Chenin Blanc.
No, that's a hard one. That's a smooth. That would probably be like Aretha Franklin. Something smooth and warming, and yeah.
Bit of diva as well.
Exactly.
Roger, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Please, before we sign off, remind our listeners where they can find you online and where they might be able to find your wines overseas.
Yeah, so we don't have a big overseas footprint at the moment. We're busy working on that now. But follow us on Instagram at Constantia Royale and www.constantiaroyale.co.za. All our info is on there. I'm afraid to say, as a winemaker, I'm terrible at social media, so you probably won't be able to find me anywhere. But please go onto the website and have a look there.
It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself and about your wines and Constantia Royale. And good luck.
Thank you, Marina. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.